Hi there, Randy Green here, and welcome to the whole Project Changemaker Open Lectures, where I'm going to take a bit of time to discuss some of the implications of what we could call the on-Earth communities that technically are here already. And my goal with this type of information, and why I'm also putting it out there as part of the open resources instead of making it a private course or course you would have to buy, is to create a sort of new perspective on the alien agenda, because the current information that's out there, not overallly speaking, because I don't know everything, but during my 20 years of research within the alien agenda and UFOs and extraterrestrials and all of the other avenues that most of us have been traversing to find the answers, I would say that one of the main issues that I often encounter is the division or the fragmentation of perception. Sorry for being a little bit clumsy here, but the fragmentation of information about us and them. As in, the aliens are either in other dimensions, outside of our solar system, or on other planets, or in other something else than our planet. Let's just put it that way. And if they come to our planet, they come in crafts, or they use portals, or they can switch between the different dimensions, which means that their parallel dimension and ours can be breached. They can cross over, so to speak. And that even though we have had people talking about the hybrids, which are a newer invention as part of the quote-unquote Indigo kits, or the new humans, or the Novo sapiens, as talked about by, for instance, Mary Rodwell, these appear to be younger or children, as if they are part of what we could call the 1950 incoming factions that actually came in 1952 with the overflow and overflying of quite a lot of UFOs over Washington, which you can look up on the internet. Which were a completely different group of what we call android-based civilizations that, due to the some of the arrangements that were done by the elite, allowed them to come in and participate in our reality field. I know I'm very clumsy, but that's because I'm just giving you a kind of background here, but I want to go somewhere else. So that's why I'm a little bit, there's inertia to this information, because that's part of the D13 collective, and I'm not going to go there. I want to go into what we could say the already present extraterrestrial civilizations that are on our planet. That's where I want to go. And they are living amongst us and have been for a long time, and not just as in kind of in special operating vessels, which they can. And that's quite common as well, as they can rematerialize, vibrate up and vibrate down crafts. So is it possible with an organic vessel? If you have the holographic configuration, it's easy peasy business to do that, including that this reality that we are part of is called the enclosure by the extraterrestrials, because it's an artificially created reality. It's not far from the movie The Matrix, but it's not on binary code systems. It's a very, very complex holographic reality field based upon completely different mechanisms and programs than what is depicted in the movie The Matrix. But the idea is there, and that kind of goes with humans being in some sort of illusion, which all elder or older spiritual teaching systems talk about. And we are dream walkers. We are not really awake, and we are not really awake because we are in what we call 3 lower field state, a very dense type of molecular form, as well as having an emotional and mental field, which are both artificial fields that are controlled by the programs, as well as different forms of alien technology. That came in play 12,500 years ago when our reality field was hijacked and the enclosure was created for this type of human vessels. But that does not take away everything else that's going on our planet. And we are having, when you go out into space and you look at our planet, you're seeing a very beautiful planet full of water and land masses, and science have their ideas of what that actually is. Similarly, as when they look at our body, they can dissect it and say, well, we got this and that and whatever types of organs, we've got bones and muscles and tissues and whatever. But the matter of the fact is, if you go to the really core levels of our existence, including our planet, that is the quantum levels, we are there having waves and particles that are interchangeably entangled with each other under possibilities and probabilities. And we know atoms are mainly composed of what we call empty space or dark energy, if you like. And that the distance between the electrons and the nuclear proton neutron core can be enormously vast distances. The cloud of electrons that are part of the fields of electrons that are part of our planet as well. So our planet is composed as much of the same type of emptiness, and only seem tangible because we are vibrating on the same frequency level, so to speak. And here I am talking about frequencies because they're electromagnetic wave patterns that we are participating in and are made out of. So therefore it's tangible for us. If we were to travel to another reality and we would shift into the different wave patterns or holographic radiation vibration patterns, where vibration becomes oscillation and not frequencies. Frequencies is a kind of a rhythm as a wave pattern, whereas oscillation kind of goes in concentric circles as ringing waters. And that's how vibrational energies work. And that's how reality fields work, because they are based upon core domain, inner domain, middle domain, and outer domain concentric circles from where different densities are possible with different layers, which we perceive as dimensions, and different civilizations and types of beings can exist. So therefore we have what we could call middle domain terrestrial races and outer domain terrestrial races. But the outer domain is not just our enclosure. We are in this weird bubble of an extra artificiality that keeps us stuck here, which is a confinement that the other civilizations are not under. They're not under the same limitations. They can walk in and out of our enclosure as they please because it's completely under their control and their type of technology. And I've had personal experiences where that has been shown to me, including if you go to, for instance, Dolores Cannon, that talks about some of the experiences that she has been sharing from quite a lot of her clients, as in entire cars being lifted up into mother crafts that are as huge as planets, elevating or floating above the highway, and the only one that can see it is the one that's in the car that's being lifted into these enormously large crafts, which then can vibrate into a different reality where that person then can walk out of the craft and be in a still on the planet but in a different, completely different dimensional setting. So that's one example of it. So there are many that talks about this, and I have my share of personal experience of that one. One is the one I often refer to because that's one of really where I understood and got the message. We are in complete control of your reality. That really startled me. I was out, this is years ago, I was out walking my dog I had at the time. I don't have that dog anymore. I gave it over to a very good friend who's taking really good care of it, because my life, just as I got more and more involved into the paranormal level of our reality, or the meta-normal part of the outside the enclosure realities, they began to bleed through into my existence. My dog did not work well with all of these encounters and extraterrestrial visits and grays coming and going and stuff going on, even though they never were physically manifested. Once you get the understanding of the vibration, they come clearly into your mind field, psychologically, telepathically, and you sense them, because they don't need to go into our dimension. Once you have understood that this is an enclosure and the other realities that are around it can bleed through, permeate through, walk in and out of it as they please, walk through walls or whatever, and it's all based upon alien technology, then it kind of, you don't have to see them, because you know they're there, they are talking to you, you're feeling them, you know how they look, you know how they smell. It's quite simple. They don't need to manifest physically. But the first real understanding I had was, I was out walking my little beautiful dog. She was actually supposed to be a therapy dog. She was very kind, very loving. She could actually give hugs. Seriously, she was a really good dog. Still is, still alive, because I handed her over to that good friend that lives within the normality, so to speak. So she is thriving there, and that's good. That was a good decision. Okay, so I was out walking my little beautiful dog there, and I was walking uphill. And I saw this SUV coming towards me, one of these big black SUVs, and just because it was big and black, it already kind of got my attention, because I kind of think, that's an interesting car, not very common in Denmark. And it was driving towards me, and the driver was this female with platinum blonde hair, cut in a very sharp haircut, and that startled me as well, because everything about it was off. And I had this densification, as if the air molecules stood still. Even though I was walking, it was kind of suddenly a vacuum was created around me, or things changed. It was completely, I've felt this many times later since, when there are these walk in and out, they alter the vibrational pattern of our program, to put it that way, which enables them to enter into our reality. And that SUV and that woman in there were almost like the Men in Black movie, where you have the artificial driver, right? Kind of poof, popped up. She was not real. But she was there, holographically manifested in a tangible way, and she looked at me very directly, and I felt her eyes piercing me, literally. So I was noticing it. Everything was off. The air was dense. It was a vacuum. This huge black car, it had a weird vibration to it. The woman that was looking at me, weird haircut, piercing eyes, everything was off. So I noticed it. And I just kind of, it passed me, it continued driving, and then I just thought to myself, okay, well, that was odd. And then I just went back to my everyday life. The vacuum ceased to be there. The molecules began vibrating normally again. And I continued walking my dog, and I probably got 1 to 2 meter ahead. Then the air changed again, the molecules vibrated differently, and then the SUV came back again towards me with the same woman behind the wheel. And I just thought to myself, that's not possible. She just passed me. Even though she did a U-turn, she would have to drive with the speed of light to get up to the beginning of the road and head towards me again. We're talking about 2 minutes later or something. Completely impossible, defying all natural laws. So I knew something was off. And then she looked at me and she telepathically communicated to me, we have complete control of your reality, and we're showing this to you so that you understand that the world that you're part of is not real. And I was mind blown, as in kind of, when we have these very, very strong experiences, like our mind won't can't comprehend it, similarly as when I saw a craft in Australia, one of these huge white spherical crafts that came through the cloud, breaking through the cloud, an enormously large craft. And I was just kind of, why is nobody else seeing this? But I understand that when those of us who are having these experiences, we are kind of drawn into a specific setting where we are allowed to see this, but others won't see it. So that means I could stand out in the middle of the most trafficked road or in a square full of people, and a craft could literally descend upon me and I would be able to see it. I would even be able to be abducted in the middle of that crowd on that square, and nobody else would see it, because that's how they can manipulate time and space inside this enclosure, which means, and that it kind of goes with, there is no time, there's the fourth dimension, and then there is our enclosure where we have what we call 3 dimensions, which, as everything else general science tells us, is not completely accurate, but this is what they have deduced and this is what they have figured out. So that is where I kind of got the direct message. And then after that one, I began seeing things, and I got more and more of these. It has not been very often, let's say after 2021, because I haven't been out much. But before that, and during my time in Australia, and when I came back and I had a different configuration, I was observant of reality in a different way. And there was a lot of great activity between 2016 and 2021, actually. Not to the same degree after, because now they have implemented the event program. But when we were in the glitch between the old enclosure program and the new event program, there was these glitches and gaps where there would be what we could call original reality field bleed through, that then allowed me to observe what was going on, and others observed it as well, as we kind of call the Mandela effect, where we discovered that what we kind of used to know is not what is really there anymore. It's changed. If we look it up on the internet, one of the most common ones, for those of you who kind of follow up on that one, even though science tells us, oh, we're just being more accurate in our determination or estimates of where we are and what our location in the galaxy, but the Sagittarius arm, that's what it was until 2016. And then we had the shift in the galactic core in 2017, and suddenly we were in the Orion arm, interestingly enough. That followed with the complete Orion invasion attempt that happened in 2018, where the Omicron races really began to kick in. They already began in 2015, but they amped up their intervention protocol into our reality field, which hopefully should have reached its peak and should wear off, because they have gotten what they want. But we really never know. At least, let me put it this way, the those of us who are under the 5th dimensional new longitude and latitude grid that has been imposed upon the top level of the northern hemisphere, going 5 longitudes down, if you kind of count the longitudes from the North Pole and downwards, 5 circles, the horizontal circles that goes around the planet, are now under that new 5th dimensional configuration. It kind of goes with the south of England, technically, is where that last longitude covers that new 5th dimensional frequency fence configurations that will alter our mind fields accordingly. It should create some clarity for those of us who are beginning to do the transition. So that also talks a little bit about the new, technically they are not new, because I talked about that already back in 2015, how our planet will be divided into different bands of civilizations that will be aimed at either the future or being pushed back into the past or be pushed into the abyss, if you like. That's also one of the groups that will have that as their future destiny, so to speak. So our planet are being divided into five different zones where the human genome will be altered accordingly. So that's since I live in Denmark, and Denmark used to be connected to England before the ice age, so to speak, and then when the ice melted, the landmass kind of only the high points remained, and the rest is underwater. But we are connected, so I am technically connected to the racial grids and networks of England, at least if I allow myself to vibrate on that level, because technically we could say that the Norsemen and the Scandinavian people, they went in a different direction with some of the Pleiadian genetics they had got in their genetic makeup, and whereas England got more taken over by the Baal races that migrated from what we call the Mesopotamian areas. Okay, so we are here having this understanding that reality is not what we think it is, and that there are already existing colonies inside the enclosure and outside the enclosure that exist on our planet, and not just as or our terrestrial reality field, outer domain reality field, which are we see our planet, which is composed of artificiality and empty space and dark energy. And all of that empty space are the other dimensions. That's where I want to put it. So that we are entangled into a different type of reality field that technically begins in the fourth dimension. What we are is an kind of some kind of what do you call it, vehicle or extra addition to the original outer domain. So we are living in this weird floating around version of a pocket reality. That would be the right word for it, a pocket reality that is engineered in a specific way, so we think we're all alone. But the matter of the fact that we are in a very, very busy segment now, being even more busy with the different races that are here. And we might not experience it as much up here in the Western world, because there are rules about how that's to go. I'm not going to talk about America here, because they have their own rules and their own military projects and their own groupings of different species and civilizations and races and what have you. So I'm going to talk on what I know as in my vicinity of reality and what I have experienced in my travels to Australia, as well as crossing through the Emirates. And even though I was just in terminal in the airport doing transit there in Doha, I still had enough insight, or got what we could call extraterrestrial intervention, when I was traveling through or just doing transit in the airports, even though airports are supposed to be neutral areas, but they are not anymore. Or when I was up in the air in the aircraft or the plane, and what I experienced there and what I understood of our reality being up there 10,000 kilometers up in the air, and what are we really flying, or are we just elevated into the ionosphere, and then it's actually the planet that is moving and we're just standing still up there, but the planet that is moving when we're traveling? Are we really having a propulsion, or are we just, yes, of course, when we lift off and we get up there, but when we get up in the ionosphere, are we really moving forward, or is it the planet that are moving beneath us as part of the reality field? Are we just moving from one holographic nodal point to another via dynamics that has absolutely nothing to do with the craft itself? And you say, well, when we stand below and on the ground, we can see the plane that are moving up there. Yes, because then we are part of the planet, and we are standing still, even though the planet is moving. But it still kind of is it when you are, for instance, when you are in the train, it doesn't feel as if the train is moving, but if you look out of the window, everything else is moving. This is relativity. We're talking about that. That's the general relativity we're talking about here. When you're in speed, what is actually moving? Is it you that's moving? Or is it the surroundings that are moving? And the question is, we don't really know. We think it's us that's moving, because when we're looking at the outside and we look at a car that's moving, then the car is moving. But is it really the car that's moving, or is it us because we are standing still and then it appears as if it's moving? Or the Doppler effect, and when things are coming towards us, the sound waves, etc., etc. And yes, science have all good explanations on everything. But any explanation is as good as anything else. If we all agreed that it's impossible to do propulsion using kinetic processes, then that would be a scientific truth. It's just because we created a paradigm where what science determines is what's given. This is what science has come up with, and it has been peer reviewed, it has been experimented on, and everybody agrees this is the right interpretation. Similarly, as 200 years ago, the scientists were sure that that was things how they were supposed to be interpreted. Similar with the flat Earth theory. That was what they interpreted at the time. So we kind of know we have theories about our reality, and we must always take them up and review them as we learn more and more about reality and the dynamics of reality. And those of us who are doing the transition into the fifth dimensional understanding, we will learn that reality is not what general science tells us. It's within the base program. When you are in the enclosure, then these are the dynamics that science are allowed to understand. They are not allowed to go beyond that unless they get an invitation where something is shown to them, as I saw with the black SUV. So that's those of us who are part of what we could say the expanded perception of reality. We are now learning that reality is so much more than what we have been taught. And that's a very slow learning process to cope with all of these new, very advanced type of sciences that some are actually being taught while they are sleeping. Others are being pulled out without knowing it. They are just kind of feeling distracted, or they suddenly zone out, or they feel tired and they do a power nap or whatever. It doesn't take more than that, because the different groups that are here are now under, both the ones that have come in, via their different types of physical abductions, they have learned how the mechanics are of the organic vessels. But those of the races that have been here since the beginning of the colonization, actually some of them going further back than that, they don't need to abduct people or anything, because they're already in contact with our original energetic configuration that is behind this physical form that we are now existing in. And that is part of the awakening process, to understand the very complex sciences of who and what we actually are, and how we are to learn with these energy features that go so much beyond the chakra system. The chakra system is just kind of a low version of the original holographic energy system that is technically behind our entire constitution of what we are inside the enclosure. So the transition is just as much transferring ourselves out of the present paradigms and get awakened into being able to acknowledge the expanded sciences of reality and how far our true world actually goes, the true reality field, and the expanded version of what that means. And I know I'm a little bit clumsy here as well, because I'm not going to do complete scientific explanation of everything, because that's part of my progression work courses, as well as in the template science course material. I talk about the timelines, the code streams, how we work with this, and the whole deeper explanations are part of my course material. So if you want to go the step ladder way into learning to understand this, studying it as if you would study any other science, then the whole academy course material is the way to go to get that level of information. And there's a lot of courses, and it's a step ladder build up process where you understand the reality dynamics. So those of us who are doing the transition, of course others have put other types of information out there, but that is my version of it, with in alignment with what we would call the original inner domain, which you would call galactic inner domain civilizations that have always been part of our terrestrial outer domain reality fields. And that means the sectors that are positioned of the original reality field in density 1 of the outer domain. And that's why we're shifting back into those of us who are doing the transition. And when I say back into, I'm not meaning as in going to the inner levels of reality. Of course, we're doing that as well. But we are resuming the original perception of reality we once had before the hijacking. So that's what I mean return back to. We are getting our original configuration activated with the different dynamics and the elevation processes of our universal structure that is rippling into our outer domain to activate and clean up and then transfer whatever must be transferred back into the progressive worlds under the D14 collective. So that's how that one's going to go. And that's from where I want to talk. I'm not going to talk about the D13 humanoid races and their work here. I think I have given that enough attention in most of my material with the humanoid races, and I feel that there's no more need to give more energy to that level, because they are so far in their agenda and what they're doing here and their programs and their experiments and hybrid projects and whatever's going on, and that's their thing to do. And the main center of that one will of course be America, no doubt about that. Parallel Universal Matrix will have its headquarters in America. That will be, or North America, that will be the new Atlantis, but eventually South America will be involved in that too when the crystalline Sirian beast will return, which they will not far into the future, and then the entire American continent will, in the eyes of the D13 collective, will become the new Atlantis, trying to revive the sciences and the abilities and what took place in the later stages of Atlantis. And that's technically very close to the fall of Atlantis, because there was some really unfortunate programs going on there, and that's what these races that have come in the Parallel Universal Matrix races wants to revive. So America is going to be the headquarter for that. So that's also why I'm just kind of course, those of you who are from America and you're doing my classes, individuals are always allowed to choose their own personal path as things are now. I can't say how it's going to be in 10 years' time, but as things are right now, individuals are always allowed to choose their own path of progression or what type of jurisdiction they want to be part of. But that does not mean that they're going to let you go easily. Let us put it this way, as if, yeah, you're free to choose if you want to run marathon, but to be able to run marathon, you can sign up. But to be able to complete the marathon, you have to train, you have to really diligently work with your body to be able to run the marathon, okay? Or yeah, it's okay, you can sail across the ocean if you like, but you still have to practice, you have to train, you have to figure out how to do it. And the same with the individuals in America saying, yeah, I want to do the progression work under the D14 collective and get back to the original universal cycles and recreate my original lineage, genetic composition and energy system configuration, but that's not the same as you're being allowed to do so. So that's part of the Changemaker material, and that's why I'm making this little series here, just to remind you that this is not a matter of incoming. There are new incomers, but there has always been extraterrestrial civilizations present on our planet, and that's where I wanted to go with this one. And I saw quite a lot of these cities in Australia. We actually have one here in Denmark. As I travel through with train, I always see that the humans that are there are not really humans. I'm seeing as well where I live now, but that's later. It's not what we call these alien cities that are extraterrestrial races that have chosen to take on the human form and are existing inside our reality, but in a different type of setting. These cities are under shields or domes. And you kind of enter into them. You're allowed to enter into them either the highway or by train, or if you choose to live there. But if you choose to live there and you go there and you live there, then you will be altered genetically to be able to live in that city. And they will then determine whether or not you will be observant of that the humans around you are actually not real humans, but are some of them actually just holograms. Others are a type of clone, and others are the operating vessels of these alien species that are here. And that's, I know how it sounds, and many will say, whoa, that's science fiction. Are you sure you're not having Men in Black movement here? But there's a reason why they made these movies, right? There's always a reason for everything. Nothing comes out of the blue or nothing. Even though it's kind of turned into a nice story, it still shows that we do have extraterrestrial races that have lived here for a very long time and are part of our society. And I understood that before the Men in Black movies were made. That little city here in Denmark. And there are other cities as well. So cities are not just cities. Humans are not just humans. And that's one of the things that we will wake up to understanding as well. Really understanding that there is no them and us. There are different variations of the XY chromosome human and the XX chromosome humans. In their different programs with a different type of energy constitution or configuration with an organic vessel that might appear to be the same on the direct interface system if you're not observant, because the program is clogging your view of what you're seeing. But if you're allowed to see beyond the programs that are controlling the human brain and the wave patterns and what your eyes are able and capable of seeing and perceiving, well, then you will perceive that reality and other humans and what we're a part of is something quite different. And I did make some podcasts from Australia, which are now no longer on YouTube, because as the Orions came in and took over, and it was just, I decided I didn't want to show myself too much out on YouTube, but kind of just do the podcast as I'm doing here as well. So I could, because I got more and more interference with people that were looking at me as they looked at my videos where I was represented. The ones that were under these different negative factions had too easy access to me. So therefore, I'm not showing myself in the video, so to speak, but are just doing it as a voice that you're hearing in the podcast. And it's just as fine, because in the end, it's not the information. It's not about looking at me or relating to me, because I'm just a messenger. But it's about, when you listen to the information, contemplate upon the ramifications of it. What are the consequences of this understanding that the extraterrestrials have been part of us and are here around us and are living next door and have been for a very long time? Going back to the Mu colonization of our planet, where we had the seeding of what we call Neanderthals, as well as the other extraterrestrial colonies that were seeded at the same time. It has always been a joint field for specific groupings of races that were part of what we call the galactic communities under both the progressive races but also the humanoid races. And then in Lemuria it was the same thing. In Atlantis it was the same thing. And in the reseeding, the fourth cycle after the fall of Atlantis, same thing. And it is the same thing today. So this whole kind of differentiation, where you're kind of saying, well, them and us, as if they're not here, they're already here. And this whole looking at the craft in the sky and say, oh, what is that? Or this kind of an invasion, or what's going on? They've already been here. This is part of their reality. I would say 40% of the different UFOs, let's just call them that to make it easy, these weird objects that are seen in the sky, whether it is squares or circles or spheres or tic-tacs or whatever it is. These are drones. These are literally part of upholding our enclosure. They are part of the programs that are running our reality. They're all of these. The tic-tac for me is a kind of a weaving machine that constantly weaves that kind of artificial reality that we are looking at. And at the same time, it's also scanning. It is looking for where the gaps, what has kind of gone to pieces of the network, what needs to be repaired, and then altering the molecular state in the reality around it, so it therefore can. It's like if you have a loom, right? You have that thing that goes back and forth. That's technically what a tic-tac is doing when it's out there doing what it needs to do. But it can also work in spirals, etc., up and down, vertical, horizontally, whatever is needed to weave the network that keeps up the illusion that we're part of. And many other vessels that we are not seeing because they're so high up, they don't need to go down into our human contaminated collective fields of emotions and mental stuff that is floating around, and energetic parasites that are jumping as we are interfering with each other and are living off the same type of bands of energy that composes what we understand as human. So that means that the extraterrestrials that are here as part of the integrated colonies, they might look human. It could be a holographic overlay, but it could also be that they actually have taken on this body. But if you look at it from a DNA angle, they will have their own doctors, which are a normal doctor from everybody else. Similar Men in Black moment here. But if you are an extraterrestrial and you go to that doctor will shapeshift, so to speak, into the other version that matches the reality field configuration of the extraterrestrial embedded humans. So they are living inside this reality, but they are working on their own networks. They are working in their own version of reality. Right next door to you, you can go walk right beside that extraterrestrial, and you won't know it unless you can feel the molecular shift and the different type of energy that they kind of emit. They live amongst us, but they live in their own reality. They are seeing we are walking on the same street, but they are seeing other stuff than we are because their version is dissimilar to our version. Everything they are doing works in a different manner. So they have a different chromosomal composition that is extra to their organic forms, which makes them able to process fourth dimensional energy. And even though their body is present next to ours and they can operate inside our reality, which they do, they can also there are different gate systems. They can just kind of walk down the street and go to the left. And if you follow, then they would have been gone. They're gone because they kind of just opened a portal and shifted, or they shifted their molecular state and went into their fourth dimensional version. Still the same street, but their version of it. So they always live with this double reality setting that is relative to the vibration of their organic vessel. That's some of the things that we're going to re-experience when we begin our little upgradings and transitioning into the original settings of our reality field. So that's part of some of the upgrading programs that are going on here amongst the already existing civilizations that came here during the times of Mu or Lemuria or Atlantis and have remained here, having their own secondary realities close to ours, part of ours, adjacent to ours, and they are living amongst us, and they look like you, and they look like everybody else, but they are, chromosomally speaking, different, and they are living in a different level of our reality. And that's one of the things, those of us who are trying to do the progression work, we can shift into that level. Quite a lot. They reconfigured me when I went to Australia to be able to be part of that. And that's some of the things I want to touch ground with in some other lecture. But here I've just seeded the idea for you to contemplate upon. And that part of the awakening process of the higher awareness lifestyle is to understand that the brain has two levels. It has the frequency network that runs with the programs, the base program, and the limiting technologies that are prohibiting you from actually perceiving reality as it truly is, but are pushing your mind and your emotions into a specific setting, specific configuration where you perceive and sense reality in one way. You're seeing the reality program in one way amongst all of the other humans that are under the same type of technology. But if you clear that one out and you get yourself reconfigured, or if these original races decide that this is where you get a peek into the true worlds of what's actually going on here, your entire physical form and energy system will reconfigure itself, and your chromosomes will get the addition that allows you to perceive and exist in these adjacent realities that are very much already part of this world, part of the country that we live in under these different dome cities, that keeps up that configuration that allows these extra chromosomal extraterrestrials in human forms to exist on the same plane of existence as we are without being part of it at all. Once they go into their house, which often has a type of torus above it, torus technology, we would see it as a craft, but it technically isn't. It's a torus that runs specific type of energy configurations. They are in their dimensional setting that allows them to walk from their house out of the door and into a completely different reality field using some of the fourth dimensional bridges that are also present on our planet. So we have these overlying realities that are part of our reality. And I saw quite a lot of examples of this in Australia, and that's some of the things I want to discuss in these open lectures. But for now, the ideas have been seeded, and thank you for listening to this one, and I hope you return to the other lectures where I will discuss more of these ideas to shift your perception of what the world is, what you are, what others are, and what journey that we are technically on, and what the extraterrestrials are doing here, which you have got a lot of information about, and I'm also talking about that in my course material. But here we are looking more into the future than into the past. Thank you.